Hey everybody, Justin Pittman here from Precision Fly and Tackle. We're here tonight with Ben John. He's doing two featured ties for us tonight. One is the Slumpbuster and one is a type Minnow that was created by a local fly tyer here in the Boiling Springs area by the name of Tony Duranzo. If you really like what we're doing here with our YouTube videos, gear videos, and fly tying videos, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can follow us at precisionflyandtackle.com and also our Facebook and Instagram page. There will be a discount code at the back of the video that you'll be able to use on our website throughout the end of the year. Again, thank you so much for following us. We appreciate it. Again, like, share, and follow us on our social media.
All right. So, very first fly that I'm going to start off with tonight is called the Slumpbuster. It's one of the most effective streamer patterns that I use in spring creeks, steelhead, and even for smallmouth. Slumpbuster, is basically a sculpin looking pattern. It has some, honestly, it has some of the easiest materials to use. I do not tie it traditionally. So that's one of the things that is different when you look at the way I tie it. I save time and I save material. I try to make it as simple for myself and allow when people learn how to tie it, they can actually use it in an effective manner. So the very first thing we're going to be using is a streamer hook, a size 6, and then a Conehead, a size medium, for just to get the weight down. The thread I'm using is Veevus 140, and I use a black thread. A lot of people like to use a sculpin or a olive color. What I tend to do is like to keep the thread more on the black side. It kind of tends to hide anyways in there. So the very first thing I'm going to do is start off with just wrapping in my thread, and I'm going to work my way back to the bend of the hook here, because what I'm going to do is get everything wrapped in here and tie in my pine squirrel strip. Now some people may think that pine squirrel acts very similar to rabbit. It doesn't. Pine squirrel is more it has more barbule fibers in it, and it's thicker. Where rabbit tends to be more wavier in the water, pine squirrel has a different look and a different flow in the water, and instead of it breathing, it kind of twitches. So the color we're going to use is just olive color. It's just a Zonker strip, and I tend to cut off just more than what I would need. Most people, they'll cut off, this big long strip. They'll cut off 6 inches if they even have 6 inches. What I tend to do is just get a 4-inch strip, and I gauge it off of how far I want my tail to be. The tail is one of the most important parts. If your tail's too long, you're going to be missing fish, especially trout. If your tail's too short, it's going to lose the momentum on there. So how I gauge my tail is I take the length of the hook and I kind of pinch it right where the length of the hook is at the eye, and that's how I would measure my tail. And I'm going to go ahead and pull apart the fur on the actual strip itself to make a little divot in there, and I'm going to just start securing the the pine squirrel strip in. And I only do a couple strips because I want it to just be able to flow over top of that. One thing, if you want to make a Slumpbuster that's a little bit more sturdier, that can handle a beating a little bit more, throw a little super glue or Zap-A-Gap in there, and it will withstand itself. I tend to keep my thread tight in there to secure it, make sure it doesn't move around on me. And I'm just going to build a body up just a little bit. Again, the other version of a Slumpbuster uses flat braid. I like to use Senyo laser dub because the way it gets on the hook, it actually forms a body a little bit better. And it creates a thicker body instead of having a little thin profile. And also there's a lot more colors in the Senyo braid than there is Senyo dub than there is flat braid. And I'm going to dub that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I got this tightly on. I'm not going to brush it out. I'm going to overlap a couple of them to start building my body there. I don't know if you saw that. I'll do that real quick. I take the thread, advance up, I wrap it back over. This is a Kelly Gallup technique. I've seen him do it several times in his videos. That's to build the body up, and it kind of gives you a little bit more of a profile getting close to the head. And notice I didn't put a lot of dubbing on because I like to really measure out my dubbing, make it look good so it doesn't, one, I don't waste as much dubbing too, and three, I can make it, the profile look exactly the shape that I want it to. And I have pulled out a decent amount of dubbing just on the side just so I know what I need. And I'm going to just advance that up in there. And I like to leave just a little bit of space. If you bring this, either rabbit, sorry, I keep on saying it's a rabbit strip, it is not. If you bring the pine squirrel strip forward, I like to leave enough that if I tie this in, when I make my couple wraps around for the collar, it looks and hides in the cone really tight. So the next step is to flip up. Now, the other version of Slumpbuster, you would tie in wire, it's ultra wire, and this step is last. And that ultra wire you would then weed through. The difference between mine is I can tie a good bit in, you know, a half hour versus using the wire. You gotta kind of separate and pull it away. I like making stuff simple for myself. So again, I'm going to pull the hair back and separate it. I'm going to throw the thread in here, and I'm going to make sure I pull that tight on there. And I'm going to give it one more wrap. And then this is one thing that I started doing a little bit more. I'm actually going to secure this. And notice how I'm actually making more of a bulk. What that does, that actually secures everything in, and then I don't have to worry about this strip getting undone or sliding on me. Now again, if you want to really make it secure, throw a tiny bit of super glue there, and then as you make your wrap, it will stick together. It does a really good job. If you're having problems with stuff coming apart, I'm going to start advancing my pine squirrel strip and wrapping the collar. And what that does, it allows that to fold over and lay flat behind and puff out like a sculpin would look. And if you would ask me how many times do I wrap it, I literally can't tell you because sometimes they're different. It all depends on how short the shank is. There's several different hooks that I use. This is the most common that I use. But I try to get the fur to make sure that I don't get any hidden or stuck in there. And I'm going to give it a nice little tug to make sure I got it in there pretty good. Notice the bead is a little bit loose. That means I got a little bit of room to use. And I actually pulled just enough. And I'm going to slide wrap underneath of the rabbit strip, the tag end. Now this is a kind of a little trick that I do. I'll cut just enough of the rabbit strip off. I'm going to leave a tiny tag, and it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to rotate that little tag right there. I'm going to tuck that in. I'm going to hide that tag inside the cone head. And the reason for that is, one, it secures the rabbit strip, the pine squirrel strip for me. And two, it allows me to kind of keep that cone head from sliding back on me. So I'm going to do a whip finish. Again, I use my fingers if you watched the last video that I did. I'm going to whip finish that, and I'm going to cut my thread. and that is the Slumpbuster profile that I like to have. If you look, it's pretty tucked in there. All the strip is tucked in there. The nice part is my bead, my cone head doesn't slide or jiggle back and forth, which does that really matter if you have that much of a gap? Probably not. It's more the profile and how this looks in the water. Again, I tie Slumpbusters to catch fish and not to look pretty all the time. But this pattern has really been effective. I've used it all over Pennsylvania. And again, I use this pattern for Erie, for steelhead up in Erie. One thing that if you're noticing fish are refusing it, tie a couple without a cone head. Having something that has no weight on there and you can put maybe a split shot on, or you got it in a skinny water, will give you just a little bit of an option for that. So that is the Slumpbuster, and then the next thing we will go into is Titan Minnow. So the next fly, the Titan Minnow, and as Justin talked about it, this is a local fly. Tony ties this up. I've seen him tie it up at Yellow Breeches Outfitters back when he did a steelhead camp, steelhead thing. I actually did that with my dad there. It was a pretty cool, interesting thing. The Titan Minnow is an easy tie, and once you learn how to tie it, you'll want to tie more of them just because they're so easy and so fun. So the very first thing is I'm going to use the same style hook, which is a streamer hook size 8. This model is, the hook model is 11, 7, 10. I think that's a Daiichi hook model. There's pretty much the Tiemco models out there, but I honestly like this style. This style is a little bit longer shank, so I would imagine this is a 1X strong. And if you're using for steelhead, I like to use a little bit thicker hook. The thicker wire does help not to bend out. I'm going to use the same style, the same thread as the size 140. It's just I'm using white. Very first thing that I'm going to do is tie in. I don't know if you can see, I'm tying in right here. There's almost like 2 fingernail length. And what I normally do is I try to keep it where I tighten and start my thread right behind the eye. It's very, very close to the eye. If I really wanted to, I could come up and start right on the eye. Titan minnows definitely are effective even without the weight. The next thing that you throw on is chain eyes, and these chain eyes are going to be a size medium. I'm going to use a colored chain eyes just to kind of throw a little different mix in there, and they're a little bit more mute. And all I'm going to do is figure 8 it. I started a couple wraps just to secure the eyes, and I'm going to figure 8 it. And a lot of times with chain eyes, they don't want to stay. I don't want to put too much tension on the thread because I'm only using 140. And then I do an under wrap. That under wrap does keep it secure. And the difference between a chain eye on some of these flies and like lead eyes or heavier flies, you're tying a little bit further back and you're able to put some thread in front that does secure it. So what I end up doing is take a little bit of bone dry Solarez, just dab it right on there, and I'm going to hit it with the UV light just so that doesn't keep moving on me while I'm using the tying in the rest of the materials. And that should be cured there. And that's the very first step. I'm going to use a different color, but this would be, in a sense, if I'm using for steelhead, this would be the color that I would use. This is a rainbow Krystal Flash. This color, I don't know if you can see that real well, but this color does have a lot of different, varieties in there. It gives a whole lot more of a look to the profile for steelhead, especially if you're going up the Erie. I know a lot of guys only use a couple strands. I have found sometimes you want to use a little bit more. And just a little bit more flash does help. And the measure this is based off of how long do I really want this to be in the water. Do I want a long tail? Do I want a short tail? There's different scenarios. If you have real skinny water, you don't want something super flashy that it's breathing too much. You want something that has just a little bit of a set on there. I'm going to tie it just like how I would normally tie it. And all I do is I secure the Krystal Flash in there. Get it really good in there. And I'm going to cut off my excess. Now if you want to throw a little red in there, I know a lot of guys throw a little red and they'll take red Krystal Flash and they'll bend it forward to make kind of like a gill, or you can do it the opposite direction. That is totally up to the tire at that point. This is not a, one color works best. I know that there's definitely some different colors that will work better during low light, and different colors do work better during, bright sun. But I tend to like to have something that, I know that the fish are already keyed in on. And I honestly think the movement is the biggest thing on this. The next thing that we're going to use is Flashabou and Pearl. And this is what it looks like in the package. It comes in a nice little sealed package. It's a Wapsi material. And as you can tell, I've used a lot of mine. And what I need to do is I need to pinch off just enough. And what I tend to gauge is just enough is just laying it on top of the hook. Would it cover the bead chain in the middle? And that's how I kind of gauge, like, is that enough for what I'm using? So I'm going to go ahead and cut up all the way. Now, what I'm going to do here is I measure it out. I'm going to give a little bit more on one end versus the other end, because when you bend this over, it's going to be shorter if you try to make it the same length, just by eyeballing it. So the front side, what's sticking out, you want to have just a little bit longer, and make sure your thread is right advanced up to the eye. That's one thing that I've done several times. I tie it in and I tie it in back here. You want to tie in right at the chain of the eye. So again, I'm just making sure that I got this measured out and lined up just right. And I pinch the material just so it doesn't move on me. I make one secure or two secure wraps there. And I'm going to bend the material over the eye. Get it to my other hand here if everything works out. There we go. And I'm going to give two more secure wraps, and then I'm going to try to get the materials to lay back just right. And all I'm going to do here is really just make sure everything's wrapped just right. Now, some guys, they put some flash on there. You can put some dubbing to make it different. Does it really matter? Sometimes it does. Having a different profile, having a different look sometimes does matter. I'm just going to whip finish here, and then the next step is probably the most important step to this, and that is putting on some kind of head cement just so that it stays secure on the hook, because these flies do tend to like to move back and forth on you, and when you're tying them up, if you don't secure the eyes in place at first, every time you go to wrap something or do something, they will slip on the side. So again, I'm using Bone Dry Solarez just to secure that on top. And so that way, if you're going for steelhead, this pattern can get, this is a great pattern, but this will get messed up on you. These fish have some pretty gnarly teeth. They like to shred stuff up. So that's why I use a head cement or some kind of curing glue on here, just so that way the fly, I can at least catch maybe one or two steelhead on a fly, or 3 or 4, depending on how the day is going, and making sure that the material stays on the hook, because the last thing you want is like your last fly to have no material left on the hook. And as you can kind of see, we can see like the bare hook in there. That is okay. But the motion that this fly makes, a lot of it has to do with the Flashabou. It does have a little stiff wiggle to it, and then the Krystal Flash keeps that keeps the Flashabou in place. It kind of keeps everything flowing the right way. And this little pattern, you know, I have caught trout on this in some of the spring creeks around here, but for steelhead, this is kind of the go-to pattern when you have real skinny water. You got fish that are chasing minnows. You can kind of see them chasing minnows, and then you got a lot of activity, and you're just not sure what they're doing. Because sometimes you'll notice like these fish will just blow up on the water. I've seen it actually this past weekend when I was up there. I saw several fish just explode on the water on top. I knew exactly what was happening, and we threw on a tight minnow, and it pulled out real well. These fish tend to like the little minnow pattern. Again, tie them to the color of the actual bait fish. I like the pearl and the the copper Krystal Flash and the rainbow Krystal Flash. But there's definitely a lot of different kind of Flashabou. Have different varieties, different lengths. The springtime, you can use a much longer pattern. I've used a 4-inch pattern of the Titan Minnow. I've caught some really nice steelhead on that. So you don't have to just stick to this little profile. When it comes to the springtime, they get more aggressive when they're up in the tributaries. They will definitely attack a bigger profile. So I definitely keep that intact. Again, thanks for joining us tonight and listening to me talk here. Hopefully I didn't talk you guys' ears off. If you have any questions or you just want to know more about the materials or how to fish them, please feel free to reach out to us here at Precision. And thanks again.